Revelator aggregator. I believe I've mentioned before that Graham Hancock is one of my favorite researchers. I'm listening to the audiobook version of his research into the Ethiopia connection to the Ark of the Covenant. It's called The Sign and the Seal. And boy, oh boy, I mean, I've got like 14 hours left. And man alive, he's gone down some interesting rabbit trails thus far. So I've got lots of thoughts on all this, and I might end up having to do multiple videos, or I may be able to get it into one really long video. But strap in, make sure you've got your socks pulled up because they're about to be knocked off. Make sure your wig is securely fastened because it's about to be flipped. Also, I don't intend to simply just regurgitate Mr. Hancock's work product. I've got some value to add as well. As I've said before, he's not a believer, and I think he grasps more than he lets on in his books. You always wonder with a lot of these books how much is left on the cutting room floor. Jim Mars, rest his soul, was always talking about how his publishers and editors would cut out a bunch of stuff from his books before they made it to the public. And I think his book on the Illuminati, the one that he had published shortly before his death, was with a different publisher, and I think more of what he wanted actually made it into that book. So it's hard to know how much was cut out of any of Graham Hancock's books. Let's start with the Kibra Nagast. It is an Ethiopian epic that was first committed to writing in the 1300s, I believe. The 12 or 1300s. But the story had been around for much, much longer, dating all the way back, potentially back to like 1,000 years before Jesus, to the time of King Solomon. And this Ethiopian or Abyssinian epic postulates that Solomon and Sheba had a child, Menelik the First, who was king of Ethiopia. And it also postulates that Sheba was an Ethiopian queen rather than a Saudi or Yemeni monarch. Solomon was the son, one of the many sons of King David. And Solomon is famous for his God-given wisdom. He's also credited with writing a lot of the Proverbs in the book of Proverbs. I believe Menelik stands for son of the wise man, but in any event, the story goes that when Sheba returned home from visiting the court of Solomon in Jerusalem, she returned home pregnant, and that she gave birth to what would be Solomon's firstborn son. And years later, he visited Solomon in Jerusalem. And the elders of Israel, feeling threatened by this foreign son of Solomon, asked Solomon to send him away. And Solomon said he would only send him away if they would send their firstborn sons with him. So they agreed. But in the meantime, the firstborn sons of the elders of Israel decided to steal the Ark of the Covenant away to Ethiopia. Now, this would have all been during the reign of Solomon, which ran from approximately 970 BC to 931 BC. The last reference to the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament is in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, where King Josiah who reigned from approximately 640 BC to 609 BC, asked the Levites, the priest tribe, to return the ark to the temple. There's no indication of why it had been removed from the temple, and there's no indication as to whether the Levites did or did not return the ark to the temple. So conceivably, there could have been a conspiracy of silence about the ark being gone, beginning when it was allegedly taken to Ethiopia sometime in the 900s BC. Because the Ark of the Covenant had it was basically imbued with the power of God, was used as a weapon, was used as a communication device with God. So where did it go? We know that there's no record of Babylon taking it when they sacked Jerusalem and burned down and destroyed the first temple in like 587, 586. And Babylon would have crowed as hard as they could about this kind of thing. So Babylon didn't take it. And then the Romans, when Titus sacked and destroyed the second temple, just like Jesus had prophesied would happen like a generation before. But when Titus sacked and destroyed the second temple in AD 70, there's always been speculation that the Jewish elders buried relics and treasures and texts under the temple to preserve them before it was sacked. The Arch of Titus displays like a giant menorah and other booty that had been captured. Which brings us to the Hoogie Boogie Templars, who in like the 1100s AD excavated under the ruins of the second temple. And also, coming up in part 2, we'll address this, and we'll also address the black Jews of Ethiopia, the first temple Jews of Ethiopia that still engage in animal sacrifice, which is unique to the rest of the Jews all over the world. No other group of Jews still sacrifices animals. So stay tuned for part 2. Father God bless you all. Jesus Christ saves. Stay positive.